Hello Bookish friends! Today I'm here with my November wrap-up part 2. First of all, I'm going to talk about the monthly statistics of the books that I read in November, and then I will talk about 7 books that I finished and 1 book that I DNF'd in the second half of November. In November, I read a total of 13 books. 5 of them were nonfiction, since I joined Nonfiction November. 2 of them were thrillers, 2 of them were chick lit or romances. I read 1 historical fiction, 1 science fiction, 1 fantasy, and 1 adventure or general fiction book. I read a total number of 3027 pages. I read 1 book that had less than 100 pages, 3 books between 100 and 200 pages, 6 books between 200 and 300 pages, 2 books between 300 and 400 pages, and 1 book between 500 and 600 pages. The average page number per book amounted to 248.23 pages. As for publishing dates, I read 1 book published in 1950s, 1 book published in 1970s, 1 book published in 1980s, 1 book published in 1990s, 1 book published between the years of 2000 and 2010, 4 books published between 2011 and 2015, and 4 books published between 2016 and 2019. I read 9 books originally written in English, 1 book in Turkish, 1 book in Portuguese, and 1 book in Norwegian. I read 7 novels, 4 graphic novels, and 2 essay collections. As for target audience, I read 12 books targeted towards adults and 1 YA book. I read 11 ebooks, 1 audiobook, and 1 paperback. I rated 3 books 6 out of 10, 3 books 7 out of 10, 6 books 8 out of 10, and 1 book 9 out of 10. My average rating for these 13 books was 7.37 out of 10. As I mentioned before, I DNF'd 1 book which was called Bir Maniniz Yoksa Annemler Size Gelecek. 70'li yıllarda Hayatımız by AyferTunç. This title can be roughly translated as if you do not have any restraints, my parents will visit you. Our life in 1970s. I plan to read this for the time prompt for Nonfiction November, because it was a very short Turkish nonfiction book, which I thought would be easy to read. But unfortunately, I really didn't like the general attitude of the book. I was also born in 1970s. Some of the things that were told also related to the beginning of 1980s, but it was said that they had the best of childhood, and children today do not enjoy anything they do. Their childhood is false, and our childhood was best. That was what the author was trying to say. And I strongly disagree with this statement, because you cannot know how a child feels unless you're in their shoes. And I know from my nephews how much they enjoy their style of childhood. It's like our mothers saying, I really can't understand about online friendships. Is it real friendship? It's like that. I mean, they are having a childhood. It's different from our childhood, but it's an experience to be treasured, if they are happy, of course. So I really didn't like the idea of trashing today's children, and I DNF'd it. Let's go to the positive side and talk about the books that I finished. The first book that I finished in the second half of November was a buddy read with Rainey Day Reads. One Calls the Heart by Janette. This book talked about a female teacher who taught in Canadian West in the frontier times. This book is actually a Christian romance. I had reservations before going into this book because as you can guess, I'm not a Christian. I found the book to be full of positive messages without being preachy. And I accepted that they were religious as a part of the story. And it really didn't bother me at all. And it was the right book at the right time. Because of the earthquake that we suffered, and because I work in disaster management area, although I'm not working in the field, I had a really stressful 20 days, and this book, full of positive messages, has helped me a lot. Tia from Tia and all the books mentioned that some books feel like a hug, and this book really felt like a hug to me while I was reading it. So I really enjoyed it, and I also identified with the character of Elizabeth very much. Big addition was the fact that I read it with Rainey. I mean, we both enjoyed the book and we talked about the book, but on the other hand, we talked about many things. Rainey became like my therapist at some times, and I cannot thank her enough for this wonderful body reading experience, which has helped me a lot psychologically, as well as having a real fun while chatting with her, because she's fabulous. And lastly, for this book, I want to say I did a front pages screen video about the pilot episode, which was a TV movie of When Calls the Heart TV series. I compared this book with that pilot episode. So in summary, I gave the book 8 out of 10. And then I finished, I think, the strangest book that I read. Bir Kış Gecesi Eğer Bir Yolcu, which has an English title of If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, by Italo Calvino. It's mainly about a reader who finds 10 unfinished works by different authors and tries to find out the connection between them while evaluating his and sometimes her characteristics as a reader. As I've said before, this was the strangest book I read, and I read this for my real life book club. My friend who suggested this reading also made a presentation about ergodic literature, in which this book belongs to. This book really exercises your brain. In my experience, first I tried to find the connection between the unfinished stories. Also tried to remember all the characters in those different stories. And then by the end of the book, I decided not to do that, and only enjoyed the writing style and how the author really made real big comments about writing, reading, and the experience of being a well-read person. In summary, I can say that I really liked the writing style of Italo Calvino, but because the book had a very different structure, I like books with fixed structures. I prefer to be connected to the characters, and by the end of this book, I didn't remember any of the characters. Although I appreciated the value of this book, I gave this book the highest rating that I could give to such book, 7 out of 10. And then I tried to read another Turkish nonfiction book for the time prompt, which was titled 100 Meşhur Aşk by Adem Suad. It was a very quick read. It talked about 100 very famous love stories throughout the beginning of the time, which fitted the time prompt by that way. And it actually started with Adam and Eve, and I think ended with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. It was a very mixed bag, and it was a compilation of many works, and some love stories were researched very, very well, and I had no idea they existed. And it was a joy to learn about them, while especially the modern ones were not researched very well. I felt like they were just put there to even the number 200. So I gave the book an average of 6 out of 10. As the fourth book, I finished the third book of March by John Lewis, Andrew Aydin, and Nate Powell. I forgot to say in my first wrap-up, this graphic novel series was recommended to me by two booktubers, Tia All the Books and Amanda at the Curly Reader. I like to thank them both because although it was not my favorite book, graphic novel ever, I really enjoyed reading about this non-violence movement which led to the acceptance of the voting right for colored people. It was a really good summary, and I gave that graphic novel 8 out of 10. I mentioned in the second book that some of the events were given back to back and without giving any consequences. Because maybe this book was a bit longer and talked about the consequences much more, I like this third book the best, and I'm really glad I read it. And as the fifth book, I finally finished The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. This was an audiobook that I've listened for, I think, for a month. Because of the earthquake, it got interrupted. And I read this book for my yearly project of reading one book from the authors that I want to read more of. And it was the last book for this project. This was a psychological thriller. And sometimes it coincides with legal thriller. I don't know how to give the synopsis of this book because anything I say could be considered as spoiler. So I will just give one sentence. This book starts with the shooting of a defense lawyer's wife in front of their two daughters. I previously read Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter. It was not easy to read because it had very horrific details of torture actually. But this book was also very hard to read. Although it did not have as gory details as Pretty Girls, it was challenging to read emotionally. I mean, I teared up while I was listening to this on the metro, and it was very emotional and heart-hitting, but I liked it very, very much. And that's what happens when you read a Karin Slaughter book. You sucked into the story and feel so much for the characters. Though I could not recommend this for everybody, and I want to give content warning for all the things because I do not want to give spoilers. I would still recommend this book if you do not mind harsh scenes. This book was my favorite of the month, and I gave the book 9 out of 10. And my second to last book I finished was another modern classic, Ölüm Bir Varmış Bir Yokmuş by Jose Saramago. Death with Interruptions is the English title. This book tells about a country in which people stop dying in the beginning of the year. The book evaluates the social and the political and the economical consequences of this phenomena. When I read the synopsis of the book, I thought, well, this book is not something that I'm going to like. But surprisingly, I liked it very much. I like the idea of exploring the social and economical consequences of immortality. And I also like the second half of the book very much. The reason that I could not give it more than 8 out of 10 is because of the writing style. I really hated the writing style. It had all the things that I get annoyed with. It did not have quotations. It had long paragraphs, and also some of the sentences did not start with capital letters. As a reader who likes structured writing very, very much, it was a struggle to read, but still I managed to give it 8 out of 10. So maybe you will like it much more if you read it. It's a really good book, and I would advise this book to readers who do not mind such writing. And lastly, I finished the month with reading another graphic novel, Back to the Future Volume 5, Time Served by Bob Gale. This book mainly followed a minor plot point in Back to the Future trilogy. Marty's uncle, Joey, going to prison for a robbery, and Marty tries to stop this by going back in time. This book was a very big disappointment for me because I really didn't care about Joey at all, and the characters that I like did not act like themselves, especially Dr. Brown, and Marty was also very selfish. And there was a side character which I had no interest in reading about, and also the drawing style, I think it changed in the previous volume. The characters did not even look like the actors who played them. Because I still like the universe of Back to the Future so much, I gave it a 6 out of 10. So those were the books that I finished in the second half of November. Please comment down below what was your favorite book of November. If you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, since my favorite book was The Good Daughter, I thought good should be the word of the day. Good means iyi in Turkish, and iyi is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.